Hello, everyone, and welcome to Agile Games with James. Today, we're going to be talking about psychological safety. And when you have these hard conversations, as is this playlist about having hard conversations, you want to be able to make sure that you can have those hard conversations and you're going to get the feedback you need and you want. So, here to help us figure out how to create psychological safety is Red Davidson. Red?
Hi, James. Wait, hi, everybody. My name is William Davidson, but everybody calls me Red. Red hair, red beard's got something to do with it. I started coding for money back in 1983, so don't do the math. It's terribly embarrassing. Yeah. Became aware of Agile techniques in 2004. Actually got trained in 2008 to be a Scrum Master and a product owner, and then became an Agile coach shortly after that. Started working for CA Technologies as an Agile coach, then over to Frontier Communications, Citigroup, Toyota, and finally at Chase. So, as we all know, Scrum is based upon the empirical process control, or empiricism, and the whole idea of that is transparency, being able to see what's going on, inspection, and adaptation. We don't talk a lot about what's required for there to be an honest assessment of that transparency and inspection. And I believe that what you truly need is psychological safety. If you do not have psychological safety, or you're not working in that environment where you can show off things in a safe way, then chances are you're going to be very guarded about what you say, what you do, or how you show off your material. You may be very guarded about the things you present or the way you present it. And so the cool thing is we know that's an issue in our industry, and so we've got a couple of games that are available to us.
So, all about games here, so it's good.
Okay, cool. So if you run out to the Fun Retros website, there's a couple of games out there. The first one is called Safety Check, and the second one is called Creating Safety.
If you don't mind real quick, all the links will be below in the description if you're wanting them as well.
Cool.
Please continue.
So the Safety Check game, basically what you would do as a facilitator or as a Scrum Master is you would you'd inform the folks why psychological safety is so important, and what we're going to do is a anonymous way of understanding what the safety is. You give them a 1 to 5 scale, for example. A 1 says, I don't feel safe at all, I don't want to discuss anything, I'd rather leave, actually. Or 5 is, I feel completely safe to say whatever we need to talk about. Say anything to talk about, whatever we need to talk about. You can do it through writing numbers on Post-its, you can do specialized cards, you can do something like there's a website out there called Poll Everywhere, so you can actually have folks use their phones and give you a poll, and you can make those polls anonymous.
Ah, see, I can't tell through the handwriting either.
No, you won't be able to do that either. So if you really feel like it's a problem, use cards or something like Poll Everywhere, so that you can make it truly anonymous. Okay. And then you would display the information, and you'd say, let's say that it's mostly threes, which is sort of the middle ground, 2s and 1s. It's like, okay, clearly we have an issue here. We cannot proceed. We have to talk about this. And so that's where you would transition to the next game or set of games, where you're trying to create that safety. You're trying to create that safe environment. And so one of the questions you would ask in the creating the safe environment is, put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's not feeling psychologically safe at this moment. Why would that be? What's making them feel psychologically unsafe? And you'd write it down. Everybody silently writes, and you take the Post-its and put them up on the wall. And then you would see what the categories are, and maybe start discussing it. And then maybe the second question you would ask is, well, given what we think is causing the lack of safety, what are some ways we can deal with that? Or what are some ways we can adjust our behavior, come up with a set of working agreements?
You mean within the team, right?
This is within the team.
Okay.
But even if you're feeling like, okay, we're okay, here's the team, but I've got a problem with that stakeholder out there. If you're feeling safe enough, you can say, hey, I feel whatever when we present stuff to our stakeholder, our key stakeholder. I feel like they're treating us this way, or they're
like in the sprint review?
In the sprint review especially, or at any other occasion. And so by making all this stuff visible and talking about it as a team, you have an opportunity to at least address the elephant in the room and say, this is what we're going to do about it. We're going to either modify our team agreements so that as a team we create that psychological safety. And if it's somebody on the outside, then maybe it's a case where we go, and then this is where you have to have that really strong will in this part of the Scrum Master say, hi, I want to share some feedback with you. Is that okay? Okay, great. We did a safety check in our team, and we found that we don't feel very safe. And so this is some of the comments that came out of it. And you're sort of holding the mirror up to the organization and letting them know what their impact is on the team. And then it's up to them to decide what they want to do about it. And if they're smart, they'll ask you, well, what do you think I should do? And then you can talk about it further. How to create that psychologically safe environment so that the team can try new things without fear of being called down, something like that. There's another technique you can use, which is you basically have two large Post-its on the wall. The first one says, what are the things that make us feel more safe? And then everybody writes down those things, saying thank you, whatever it happens to be. And what are those things that make you feel less safe? And write down what those things are. And then as a team, it's another way of exploring what makes us feel like we're in a safe or an unsafe environment.
Okay. Well, if I'm already in an unsafe environment, Red, and we are trying to do these activities with me, and I don't feel safe enough to even do the activity, what would you suggest?
Yeah, that's a real hard problem, because if we can't even get past that first thing of having the person feel like it's okay to at least say what's going on, that's very, very tough. But then again, notice that when we're doing the creating safety game, we're saying it's the other person. What is that other person might be feeling? And so it's always, you're sort of saying it's that other person over there. What do they think? Thinking and feeling, and that's what you're writing down on the post-it and posting it on the wall. So it sort of gives people who are not feeling well or not feeling safe an out of sorts.
So you're projecting what they might not feel safe onto someone else.
Correct.
Okay. So I guess you could also put a cutout of like a person and say, hey, what is this? This guy just joined your team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is he feeling that doesn't make him feel safe here?
Exactly.
And okay. Cool. Well, I really appreciate you talking to us a little bit about psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully these are some good tools. I'll hopefully be creating some videos expanding on how to do these activities in the future. Look out for those links. If they do, they will be in the description as well. But you need to have psychological safety to be able to have these hard conversations, whether it be with stakeholders, your team, supervisors. What about whenever you created this list, Red, and you are able to voice the things you should be doing and the things you should not be doing? Do you ever edit the work agreement? Are there ever consequences to the actions of breaking or making people not feel safe?
Yeah, so this comes back to the self-organization of the team itself. And as a Scrum Master, what you should be doing is teaching your team to become self-organizing. We should have a list of our working agreements. And some people think that's just so rudimentary. Why the heck would we have those? Mm-hmm. Well, think about it. We have an agreement as to when we will have our daily Scrum. We have an agreement as to when we'll have our sprint review. If we find that we need to, maybe we need to have something out there that says we will not interrupt each other during a conversation. And if somebody happens to interrupt you, then it's a case where, as a Scrum Master, you're hoping the team will self-enforce their own agreement. Some teams, it's all you have to do is say, wow, you just interrupted so-and-so. And that's against our agreements. Maybe consider something else.
So I've been in a few situations, not always in. Mm-hmm. I've been in a few situations where that one person calls the group out and the group just sits there and doesn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. I guess walk us through getting past that first confrontation. Because either what I've seen happen is people create a working agreement, mm-hmm. and either it goes out the door then, mm-hmm. which you don't want because you want people to enforce it and really make sure that it matters. But getting past that first conflict, what like what have you seen teams do? Like what's been your experiences to really make sure that it flourishes past that one conflict?
It's one of those things where it has to be reinforced from time to time. Where as a Scrum Master or facilitator, you would simply say, we have had several violations of our working agreements. Can anybody think of one of them? And maybe you've got the working agreements posted someplace. We've had several violations. Can somebody think of one that we had earlier today and maybe talk about it and say, all right, as a team, we should be holding ourselves to our team working agreements. Either that or let's modify it so it's no longer part of our working agreement. But this should be the rules in which we live by. And if we're not willing to live by it and call each other out on it, then maybe we should modify it. Otherwise, I'm expecting you guys as a self-organizing team to call each other out on it.
Isn't the Scrum Master in danger then of becoming essentially a policeman, like to the team, be like, hey, you're breaking your working agreement. Hey, you're breaking your working agreement.
That's one way of looking at it, but rather I would look at it this way, that part of the Scrum Master's job is to hold the mirror up. Whether you're holding your mirror up to the organization saying this is the environment you're creating for your teams,
okay,
you would hold the mirror up, in this case, to the team, saying, we said we were going to have this set of working agreements, and we would call each other out on this. And we have had some violations of it, and we have not called each other out on it. So you're holding this up to the team, and you would simply ask, what do you guys want to do about this?
What if to create psychological safety, you're calling them out, which makes people naturally not feel safe. So
Right.
How would you do that in a way that promotes safety? Because you're literally putting them in the spotlight.
Correct, but at some
as
point,
well as anyone who's breaking it.
Correct. So at the end of the day, you're going to have to be able to have these accountability conversations. Just because you're calling somebody out doesn't mean that you can't do it in a respectful way. So this is where we could rely upon the notes from Radical Candor, where you're able to give folks critical feedback, but also do it in a very caring way. So
it's not a crab sandwich.
It's definitely not a crab sandwich. In fact, they talk very negatively to the sandwich, the burrito, whatever you want to call it. But basically, I think especially if you have a strong relationship with your team, they will come to understand that you are there to try to help them become the absolute best team they possibly can be. And so when you're calling them out, you're holding them accountable, then I think they will simply recognize that it's exactly what you're doing, and you're doing it for their benefit.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do is, you can, I guess Red is saying to do that as well, just always ask questions. And people are not going, when you tell someone that they're doing something versus asking, like, hey, didn't that violate the working agreement just now? Or, versus, hey, you just violated the working agreement. It depends on how you do it as well. So just make sure you're understanding in your working agreements or when you're doing something to understand how you're going about it as well. But thank you for watching this video on psychological safety. Thank you, Red, for joining us here on Agile Games with James. He's got some great resources for us. And if you like this video, please let me know by liking, subscribing. You can also visit agilegameswithjames.com for more information as well. But Red, do you have any final thoughts for us before we?
Just one final parting thought. An HBR professor by the name of Amy came up with this notion of psychological safety about 20 years ago. Wow. It sort of sat on the shelf and then sort of reappeared a couple of years ago when Google did their 2-year massive study on trying to understand what makes a great Google team great. And there were 5 characteristics, and the number one reason why a great Google team is great is because that team had psychological safety. It wasn't the personalities, it wasn't their training, it was how they related to each other. Did they feel like they could work with each other in a way where they could say something, try an experiment, and they felt safe being able to do that? That was a key.
Makes total sense. If you don't have the safety, there's no transparency, and you can't inspect or adapt, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Red, for joining us, and to all you out there watching, keep on learning.